The screech of Martha's garden shears was the first warning that my peaceful Saturday was about to go up in flames. Why does she always look like she's hunting for a manager even when she's just trimming hedges? I watched from the porch as her eyes locked onto the matte black SUV pulling into my driveway, her nostrils flaring like a bull spotting red. This wasn't just about a guest anymore. This was Martha's final stand against the supposed decline of our gated sanctity. The air smelled of freshly mown grass and the metallic tang of an approaching summer storm. I felt a familiar knot of anxiety tighten in my chest. That fluttering heartbeat that comes when you know a confrontation is unavoidable. Can a guy just have a friend over for a barbecue without it becoming a federal case? My guest, Elias, stepped out of the vehicle, his boots crunching rhythmically on the gravel. He was dressed simply in a charcoal tactical shirt and jeans, his presence quiet but undeniably heavy. Before he could even reach my front step, the sound of Martha's heels clicking aggressively against the asphalt echoed through the cul-de-sac. "Excuse me. This is a private community," her voice shrieked, cutting through the chirping of cicadas like a rusted blade. I stepped down to the driveway, my hands raised in a calming gesture that I knew would only infuriate her further. Martha, our self-appointed HOA president and resident nightmare, was already fumbling with her phone, her face a blotchy shade of magenta. "David, you know the rules about unregistered visitors and commercial-sized vehicles. This man is a trespasser, and I am calling the authorities right now." I looked at Elias, who simply offered a small, knowing smirk, the kind that suggested he had seen far worse than a middle-aged woman in a floral tracksuit. "Martha, for the love of everything, he's my guest. He's staying for dinner. Please just go back to your petunias," I pleaded, though I knew it was futile. She was already barking into her phone, her voice dripping with artificial distress about a suspicious individual infiltrating the neighborhood. The sheer audacity of it made my blood boil. How could someone live with so much bitterness that a stranger's arrival felt like an act of war? I could hear the distant, low rumble of a siren, a sound that usually brings comfort but today felt like the ticking of a countdown clock. Elias leaned against his car, his posture relaxed, almost bored. "Is she always like this?" he whispered, the deep resonance of his voice grounding me. I could only nod, feeling the sweat prickle at the back of my neck. The neighborhood felt eerily still, the neighbors peeking through their blinds, waiting for the inevitable explosion. The police cruiser rounded the corner, its blue and red lights dancing off the manicured lawns and white picket fences. Martha straightened her spine, a triumphant glint in her eyes as if she were about to receive a medal for her bravery in the face of a harmless dinner guest. The cruiser pulled up behind Elias's SUV, and the engine died with a soft mechanical click. The door opened, and Deputy Miller stepped out, his sunglasses reflecting the harsh afternoon sun. He took one look at the scene, Martha pointing a trembling finger, me looking exhausted, and Elias standing there like a statue of granite. Martha didn't even give the officer a chance to speak. "Officer, thank goodness." This man refused to identify himself, bypassed our security protocol, and David here is harboring him. I want him trespassed immediately. Look at him. He clearly doesn't belong here. Deputy Miller walked forward, his boots hitting the pavement with a slow, deliberate thud. The silence was thick enough to choke on. I held my breath, wondering how I was going to explain this mess without getting my friend handcuffed. But then, something shifted in the atmosphere. Miller stopped 3 feet away from Elias. He didn't reach for his cuffs. He didn't reach for his radio. Instead, his hand snapped up to his brow in a sharp, crisp, and unmistakable military salute. Colonel Vance. Sir, I didn't know you were back in the state. The words hit the air like a thunderclap. Martha's mouth dropped open so wide I thought her jaw might unhinge. The silence that followed was deafening, broken only by the soft rustle of leaves in the breeze. Elias, or rather Colonel Vance, returned the salute with a sharp nod, a ghost of a smile playing on his lips. These? No. I'm just here to visit an old friend for some steak. It seems I've caused a bit of a stir with the local welcoming committee. Miller turned his gaze toward Martha, and his expression shifted from respect to cold, professional annoyance. Ma'am, do you have any idea who this is? This is Colonel Elias Vance, a Medal of Honor recipient and the man this county's new Veteran Outreach Center is being named after next month. Martha's face went from magenta to a ghostly, sickly white. She looked like she wanted the earth to open up and swallow her whole. He didn't have a permit. This UV. The rules, she stammered, her voice shrinking until it was barely a pathetic whimper. The rules. Miller stepped closer to her, his shadow looming over her small frame. The rules state you should use 911 for emergencies, not for harassing decorated war heroes because you don't like the color of their car. Filing a false police report is a criminal offense. Martha, should we take a trip down to the station to discuss your suspicious observations? I watched as the power dynamic shattered into a million pieces. The queen of the cul-de-sac was suddenly just a lonely, panicked woman who had pushed her luck one time too many. Neighbors began stepping out onto their porches, whispering and pointing. The mask of authority she had worn for years was stripped away in front of everyone she had ever bullied. Elias looked at her, not with anger, but with a profound, quiet pity that was somehow more devastating than a shout. Ma'am, he said, his voice calm and steady. I've spent 20 years defending the rights of people like you to live in peace. It's a shame you use that peace to create so much conflict for others. Maybe try being a neighbor instead of a warden. Martha turned and fled, her heels clicking a frantic, rhythmic retreat back to her house. The door slamming shut with a finality that felt like the end of an era. Deputy Miller apologized profusely to Elias, shaking his hand with genuine warmth before heading back to his cruiser. As the lights faded and the street returned to its usual quiet, the air felt lighter, the tension washed away by the sheer justice of the moment. Elias turned to me and clapped a hand on my shoulder. Still got those steaks? Dave. I laughed. Genuine, deep-bellied laugh that shook the lingering stress from my bones. We headed inside, the smell of charcoal and wood smoke finally filling the air. That evening, as the sun dipped below the horizon in a blaze of orange and purple, I realized that some walls aren't built of brick and mortar, but of ego and fear. And sometimes, it only takes one person of true character to bring the whole ugly structure crashing down. Justice isn't always about a courtroom, sometimes. It's just about the truth standing tall while a lie hides behind a closed door. No matter how loud the small-minded may scream, they can never drown out the quiet dignity of a life lived with honor. And in the end, the light will always find a way to silence the shadows of hate.